What happens when companies need experienced leaders, but nobody was given the opportunity to be experienced? Companies celebrate smaller teams, fewer managers, and greater productivity. It looks good on the quarterly reports, as we know, but the long-term costs may not appear for the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years. We may be automating the next generation of leaders out of existence. We may be eliminating low-value work while also eliminating the experiences that develop high-value leaders. Thank you for being here, guys. Today we're going to talk about a very important topic, how leaders are developed. Leaders do not begin at the top, right? If you ever watch executive leaders' careers, typically they've had many years of experience. They started off as junior engineers or admin assistants, and they worked their way up to middle management or senior middle management and director roles, and then eventually they become experienced executive leaders. You know, they start with foundational work. Most importantly, they manage small projects before major ones. They make mistakes when the stakes are manageable and less scary. They learn through repetition, coaching, and exposure. They lead one person in middle management before they lead 100. The task may no longer be valuable, but the learnings created by the tasks still are. Why leaner teams make sense? We all love AI, and we know the tremendous value they've created, obviously, right? AI can eliminate repetitive work. Many companies overhired, and they had to let folks go. Investors expect efficiency and profitability. In fact, investors right now aren't investing until companies are driving revenue and are almost, cash flow positive, almost profitable before they invest. So that takes time, that takes efficiency. So it makes sense. Smaller teams can accomplish more. They can move faster rather than being a big giant cruise ship. They're like speedboats. They can make decisions, they can pivot. So that's also very important. Some management layers were unnecessary. If you've ever worked at a company that had, all kinds of different managers, you had titles that didn't even make sense anymore. Executive, assistant, vice president of the CTO, those weren't necessary. It makes sense to eliminate some of those unnecessary kind of layers to make things go faster. Some jobs genuinely needed to be redesigned or eliminated. If you ever had someone doing an extremely repetitive task that just no longer made sense and they weren't learning, they weren't inspired, then those are some of the things that potentially we should look to eliminate and potentially repurpose those people to do more important work. However, we can't just automatically unstrategically get rid of everything and use AI instead. I'm not against AI or automation. In fact, I'm a huge advocate. I invest in AI. We have AI here. We're building constant automation and AI within our company. And I aggressively, as an angel investor and an LP, I invest aggressively in deep tech companies specifically that have AI or are AI companies themselves. But productivity cannot be the only measure of success. We have to think bigger. We have to think outside of the box. Ignoring AI is irresponsible. Pursuing efficiency without considering long-term capability is equally irresponsible. Just think about that, right? So again, we're all just blindly building efficiency, eliminating people, eliminating jobs, building AI for everything. It's actually become very normal. Before, if a manager, a leader wanted a new headcount, they went to their boss, they showed, hey, this is work that's not getting done. This is important work. I need to hire 2 people. Here's the job description. Here's what I think it needs to pay. I just need approval. Then they would think about it, say yes or no. Right? And now it's okay, have you already thought about how AI can do this? It's very understandable, but we have to be smart. Think long term, think 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and you'll see that some of these things we're doing now could be very irresponsible, especially if we care about succession planning, especially if we care about growth of people's careers and our companies long term. I met a gentleman the other day. One of the things he said that really struck me, and he'll be on the Tech Leaders Playbook soon, but he talked about how he looked at he didn't describe it as this, but looked at it as his tree of all the leaders he had trained and mentored and coached. Where are they now? And he looked at as bragging rights in a good way. He really looked at that as like, oh, let me look at the people I've managed. Where are they now? If they're succeeding, I must have done something well. And if they're not, If they've never grown in their careers, then there's potentially something wrong about my leadership. Or, of course, maybe they didn't do a great job, so on and so forth. But I'm sure he was referring to his great people. And you'll notice this in sports as well. The great coaches, typically their assistant coaches, unfortunately, end up leaving them and become head coaches themselves. And typically you watch the tree grow. So let's also think about legacy and all these things that we're creating. Let's talk about entry-level jobs and how they're disappearing, right? When we're looking at it from the distance, who cares, right? Or hiring college graduates or interns is time-consuming, it's expensive. We got to a point where, interns and junior engineers were asking for $120,000, right? And so why do we need them? Why do we need to spend all this time, money, resources, coaching, training, interning these people when we could just replace them with AI? The problem with that is AI performs many of those traditional junior assignments. Fine. But what that means is companies are reducing entry-level hiring. Fine. What does that actually mean? Everyone wants employees who can contribute immediately, right? I mean, we as an executive search firm have never gotten requests for junior folks, as you can imagine. However, just in life, this is something that was happening all the time, right? People would hire junior people, they would end up being mid-level people, then they would become senior, and they would become managers, hopefully, or directors, or just stay as very experienced, strong, senior-level individual contributors. Fewer employers want to invest in training now. They don't want to hire interns. They don't want to hire junior folks. Why? Why do I need to train and hire? I can replace what they did with AI. But experience has to be developed somewhere, right? If we can really think on a deeper, step back and think on a deeper topic about kind of just life, a lot of our kids are probably those folks in a few years, right? And so there's just the responsibility we have for our kids, grandkids in the next generation to just make sure that these people have something to do when they got out of college and they have their $100,000 to $500,000 college debts. But going back to my topic on more of a selfish, more strategic, more capitalistic view is, how are they going to get experience, right? If everybody wants experience, well, somewhere they have to get this experience. And if no one's hiring them to get this experience, then how are they going to get it? Every company wants to hire the finished product. This is what we get, right? Fewer companies want to produce them. So how are they going to become the finished product? If nobody hires juniors today, who becomes seniors 5 years from now? Who becomes your director or your chief architect or your CTO 10 years from now? They have to come from somewhere. And so that is a very important topic. Let's talk about middle management. So besides juniors, middle management has been squeezed because of AI. It's very interesting. Juniors, middle managers. People still want to hire great polished senior folks and sometimes top notch executive leaders who are going to, turn the ship around. They're going to, fix things or whatever. Companies are removing management layers. That makes sense. Some of those layers should be removed. We talked about this earlier where there's just too many layers or you got folks that don't even know what they do, right? And all they're doing is creating delays and getting approvals and projects moving along. And maybe they weren't as hands-on and just were no longer necessary. But good middle managers are essential. They translate strategy into execution. For every crazy visionary that has an idea or a vision, and then the executive leader who's got the strategic perspective, who is going to take this great strategy and create into execution and create the opportunity for their team to execute against these big visions and strategic goals. They coach emerging talent. Someone needs to coach and train and develop those juniors or mids and the seniors. They identify problems early. Usually when you're at the top, you don't see things. There are things that you miss because you're not thinking at that level. Nor should you be, right? You're working on the business versus in the business, which means you miss so many things. And those middle managers are in the trenches, doing the work, talking to your team members, knowing what makes them tick, what motivates them, what demotivates them, what they need, what the market looks like. They preserve institutional knowledge. Okay, they understand. They've been there long enough, hopefully, if they've grown into managers, middle managers in that company, they've kind of seen it all. So they know where the skeletons are, where they're not. They know, some of the institutional knowledge that's been passed down from former folks. They know the legacy code. They know so many things, procedures, processes. They know what slows things down, what speeds things up. So that's also very important. They also become the next generation of executives. We forgot about that. So if we're not hiring juniors and we're not, we're cutting middle managers, who is going to become senior and who's going to become an executive leader? Let's think about that for a minute. Eliminating bad management is healthy. It's necessary. Eliminating the management development pathway is not. Again, it's irresponsible. Someone has to get developed, coached on their way to executive leadership. Let's talk about the leadership pipeline. Most great companies have a great succession plan. And when I say succession plan, it isn't like the shows or the movies where you've got the big, powerful owner or CEOs going to step down and hand the reins to their son or daughter. It's not the case. A lot of times it's just very simple. Who's going to take over this role when this individual leaves or retires, quits, or gets fired, right? You need a constant pipeline of talent that's coming into the company, getting developed, pushing the pressure up. When companies stop developing people internally, they must keep buying experience externally. That creates more expensive executive hiring, longer onboarding, greater cultural risk, weaker succession planning, and competition for smaller pools of proven leaders. And this is a topic we know very well, right? Everybody wants the finished, polished product. So part of what we do as an executive search firm is we go into PE-run companies, we rebuild the executive teams, or a company that was acquired, or a company that just went IPO, and our job is to bring in new talent. And that is very challenging. It's very expensive, right? Because everyone wants the top 1 to 5% of leaders out there. They want the moon and the stars. And a lot of those folks are very, 1, tough to find, 2, to get a hold of, because if they're doing well, why should they take your call? And 3, they typically want large raises, right? Why would they leave their good job to go to another job when there's risks involved? So we have to think about that. External hiring can strengthen a leadership team. Trust me, sometimes you need new blood. In fact, often you need new blood, but it cannot replace your internal leadership pipeline. Yes, again, I don't also believe in a company that's always only promotes internally, because what you end up having is a bunch of people thinking exactly the same way. You have a bunch of people saying we've always done it this way, and very little innovation is happening, especially outside of the most innovative companies in the world. So you do need a healthy balance. But again, if you're not developing any talent, you're constantly bringing in talent from the outside, which again is fine. But eventually, where is this executive talent even from the outside going to come from? If no one's developing, coaching them to become those executive leaders from the outside. As I mentioned, as an executive search firm, a leader in executive search, I see companies demanding fully developed leaders without considering where those leaders are supposed to come from. Where are they supposed to come from? If 5 years ago, people stopped hiring juniors, stopped hiring middle managers, stopped promoting folks into middle management roles, stopped coaching, developing their leaders to become executives, somewhere the tree was cut off, and so there's no more fruit. Let's talk about productivity versus capability. Companies measure output per employee, headcount reduction, labor savings, time saved, short-term margins. Again, all very, very important, right? Bottom line is important. That's how, stock goes up. That's how people invest. That's how companies hire. We get it. But do they measure who's learning, who's being coached, who's ready for more responsibility and can take on more responsibilities and can take on new roles, whether they're fully new created roles that didn't exist, or someone is vacating that role for whatever reason? Who can replace a critical leader? Any moment, someone could retire, someone could quit for another job, could decide they don't want that pressure and want to step down, want to step into a new role, or just leave, start their own company, which is very common now, right? You see very few people doing the old, move into a leadership role, stay for 5 years, get promoted, move to another company, get promoted, so on and so forth. These folks are going from college to one job to a YC Combinator, startup. So we have to also know that the tree's also been being cut now from there as well, because again, it's much, much, much easier to start a company. So why should I go work for a company for 10, 15, 20 years to slowly go up the ranks, even if I want that, and then have to eventually at 40 or 50 or 60 years old, start my own company? Why not do it now? Before it was money. Now you can do a lot of this with AI. Is institutional knowledge growing or is it dying on the vine? Can employees think without AI? That's another big topic that I'd like to cover. I mean, everybody talks about, in fact, I had a guest from HireCloud today, and she talked a lot about how without, I did all this without, ChatGPT. I wish I had ChatGPT. She was talking about 2019 and before that and so on and so forth. And started thinking, wow, you're right. It's very difficult right now to sit there and actually critically think or read a document or sit there and create something. You just want everything handed to you. So eventually it's going to be very difficult for our employees to think outside of AI without AI. So that's another thing we should think about. AI can make organizations more productive today while quietly making it less capable tomorrow. It's like the calculator, right? I like the calculator because sometimes I just don't want to use my brain, but I can do that math in my head, and the calculator is a nice way for me to, when it gets really complicated, to use it. But if we introduce calculators to kids too early, guess what? Why do they need to learn math? So we're kind of in that place now with AI, so we have to be very careful. Let's talk about the experience paradox. Companies want candidates with direct experience, industry knowledge, technical depth, leadership abilities, AI fluency, strong communication skills, minimal need for training. Everything we hear is need someone to ramp up very quickly. We need someone to hit the ground running. We need someone to lift and shift. But many reject candidates with 70 to 80% of what they need. They're looking for purple unicorns off. The talent shortage is sometimes not a shortage of capable people. It's a shortage of companies willing to develop them. So what does that mean? That means literally that if they're not perfect, I'm going to pass. If they don't meet every requirement, if they mess up on one interview, let's cut them. Very odd way of thinking, right? Because remember, we're not buying cars. We're not buying furniture. We're not buying homes where you can say must have a balcony, must be this square footage, must have this much yard, must be in this city, must have this, must have that. It's not how people are created, right? People are all created differently. They have strengths and they have weaknesses, and they have good days and bad days. So this person might have been perfect, but in your 8-round interview, they happen to say the wrong thing on the 7th interview to the one guy that was looking for the one thing that he can find not to hire this person. So I often ask companies that are, too difficult. I say, hey, let me ask you a question. Are you looking for reasons to hire or reasons not to hire? Because if you're looking for reasons not to hire, believe me, you will find it. You're too smart not to. There's always flaws in people. How can companies complain about talent shortage while refusing to invest in talent? Again, it goes back to how we're thinking right now, right? Don't hire juniors, get rid of all the middle managers, but we want executive leaders. Yes, there's plenty of executive leaders out there. And I could say not plenty, but enough great executive leaders to hire to rebuild your team. But what will there be in 3 years? Maybe, because, there's VPs and things like that. How about in 5 years? Are those directors getting the proper coaching as, things continue to consolidate? How many founders are managing their own engineers now? I don't need a CTO. I'm technical. I have AI. So how, as this continues to grow, the gap will definitely continue to rise. So let's talk about something. Like, look, all this is great, but it's not going to change the fact that, yes, I want to help junior people. Hey, our kids need jobs. Hey, our friends' kids need jobs. Our kids need, a place to go after college. That's not going to do it, right? Because we're in a world of capitalism. Someone's got to sign these checks to hire these kids or young people. So what do? We redesign the junior roles. Do not preserve outdated jobs. That's not what I'm saying. Just redesign them. Replace repetitive administrative work with customer exposure. Cross-functional projects where they can work with different departments, learn new skills, job shadowing, structured rotations, low-risk ownership, AI-assisted problem solving, and participation in important meetings. expose these people to decision makers and different people in different departments so you can see where they can solve problems. You'll be surprised when you take them out of these repetitive tasks that they don't need, what value they can add with their fresh ideas and their fresh brains that we didn't ever think to put them in those situations, right? Because you're junior, go do this very repetitive job. Don't ask me, to be in executive meetings and all that stuff. Just do you. But if you don't need all those administrative things because AI is doing it or those repetitive tasks, then how do you expose these people to those other things so they can get experienced? So this is very important. Removing repetitive work should allow people to learn faster, not prevent them from learning at all. And if we don't ever give them opportunities to get these jobs, to intern, how are they going to learn? Make AI an apprenticeship tool. Think of it like that. Junior employees should use AI to research faster, explore different solutions, test their thinking, review their work, learn unfamiliar concepts, and most importantly, learn the business they're going into. That's the one thing that people historically have struggled with, right? They go into an industry that they don't understand, whether it's fintech or it's some regulated health tech or finance, something complex, and it takes them 6 months to a year to try to learn it. Well, AI will allow you to take shortcuts and to learn more and faster. So that's very, very important. But they must still explain, why is this answer correct, even if they're using AI? What assumptions were made to give me this information? What could go wrong with these assumptions? What would you recommend? And how does it affect this business? You can't full-heartedly trust AI, especially with juniors, because they haven't had enough opportunities to question things, to understand the business, to QA it. When I use AI for whatever reason to do a research project for me, I can quickly find the flaws. I can quickly redirect it and remind it what I'm looking for and what my business is and it isn't. Someone that's new in a business will not realize that. So they're blindly going to be pushing down these solutions. AI should accelerate judgment, not replace the development of the judgment. Hold leaders accountable. Measure more than just output. Track internal promotions, successors for critical positions, time to independent ownership, coaching and mentorship. Again, a lost skill, a lost art, very few people are paying attention to, but it's very, very, very much needed. Trust me. Skills developed, retention of high potential employees. To me, when a leader is not mentoring, coaching, upgrading, promoting their team, something's wrong. If it's the fact that they're not doing those things, that's on the leader, obviously. If it's because they didn't hire great people worthy of coaching and leading and promoting, then that's on them as well, right? They should have hired better, or they should have redirected folks. Retention of high potential employees are very, very important as well. If you hire great people and they're not growing and they're not learning and they're not trying new things, you're probably going to lose them, right? So that's also a very important measure. And I haven't seen, of all the companies I advise, all the things I'm exposed to through friendships, I haven't seen a single KPI that has anything to do with this. One of the most important outputs of a leader should be creating more leaders. Hopefully, you guys are learning something, and hopefully you can apply it today. But advice for the professionals out there that are hearing this, that aren't necessarily leaders. Use AI aggressively. You're going to need it. Still learn the fundamentals. Don't just immediately jump to AI to solve all your problems. I know it's tempting. Trust me. Considering I'm a person with many different hats that I wear, it's very, very comfortable for me to go to AI first just to get things done, but it's not the right way. Ask for ownership, not only assignments. Ask to own something where you can truly, you be the neck to choke if something goes wrong, because that's real accountability. Learn how the company makes money. How do you make money? How do things go well? When do things not go well? Why are you doing well this year and you weren't last year? Learn the business. Ask the right questions, and ask the right questions of the right people that can give you the right answers. Volunteer for cross-functional work. Try to learn new things. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over because it's easy and you can knock it out. Find mentors. Find mentors, especially in your company or outside the company if you can't find internally, and learn. Bounce ideas. sounding board stuff. Develop communication and judgment, extremely important. Again, eventually AI is going to do so much that we're going to have to do very little physical activity or work. We're going to eventually just have to use our communication skills and our judgment. Keep proof of measurable results. You want to show like, hey, this is growing, this is doing better because of these efforts. It's not all about look at me, but it's about like, hey, I want to try this. I think it could help the company grow in this way. And now I'm going to track it to make sure it's happening and brag about it if it's happening. Challenge AI generated answers. Everything you see, challenge it. Ask it to, but what if? But wait, but we're in this industry. But wait, our industry's in a recession. But wait, those people, those businesses you're recommending we reach out to are in a recession. Why would they buy from us? And if you get a simple, you're right, I'm going to retype this, it's probably the original prompt wasn't specific enough, right? Because it should be thinking about these things. It should push back and say, yes, you're right, but the data says this. I use this data, and continue to push back. But is that first-party data? Or is that third-party data? Where did that data come from? How old is that data? All these things have to happen if you're going to do quality work with AI. AI fluency may get you into the conversation. Judgment, ownership, and leadership will determine how far you go with it. All right, so what is the solution? This is a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts. The answer is not rejecting AI. It's not slowing down innovation. It's not going to happen. It's moving too fast. It's already gone too far where we can ever stop this monster. Preserving unnecessary jobs. It's not necessarily doing anyone good. Maintaining bloating, oversized organizations. The answer, I think, is redesigning career paths to look different, to look like the new generation we're in. Creating new apprenticeships, new opportunities. Developing people intentionally. That's important. Using AI to accelerate growth. Protecting the leadership pipeline. Again, guys, if we're blindly just focused on today, this month, this quarter, even this year, we're going to make some very, very important mistakes in the future. The old career ladder may be disappearing, so leaders now have to build a better one or a new one. In closing, ask yourself, what work are we actually automating? What did employees learn by doing this work? How will they learn those lessons now if we're automating it? How are they going to learn this? If someone used to QA something and now automated all of QA, so we don't even need QA automation folks, well, how are those QA folks going to learn? How are engineers going to learn? Who are we preparing to lead the company 5 years from today? Maybe the answer is that let's not worry about that. We'll get there. We'll bring people from the outside. What if there's no one left from the outside? What if you are competing for that 1% and that very, very few people that are out there? If we cannot answer these questions confidently, we don't know them, we haven't thought about them, we may achieve incredible efficiency today, but create serious leadership crisis tomorrow. Hopefully this episode made you guys think. If you like this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and feel free to push back on the comments. Tell us where we're looking at it all wrong. Love to hear from you. Thank you for watching Higher Calling. Thank you for watching Tech Leaders Playbook. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Have a blessed day.